Imagine for a moment that the people who irritate, frustrate, or hurt you the most aren't just obstacles in your path, but messengers carrying hidden truths about yourself. What if your strongest emotional reactions were not about others at all, but about you? Think about it. What if every conflict, every moment of judgment, and every irritation you feel toward another person is in fact a window into your own unconscious? What if the people who challenge you the most are actually guiding you towards self-awareness and transformation? Jung, one of the most influential minds in psychology, introduced a concept that is both unsettling and liberating. The idea that we project our unconscious onto others. We often think of projection as something other people do, failing to recognize how often we are guilty of the very same process. The mind, in its endless complexity, works in ways we rarely examine. The traits, emotions, and behaviors we refuse to see in ourselves are the ones we notice most intensely in others. When someone's arrogance bothers you, when another person's selfishness makes your blood boil, when you find yourself judging someone for their lack of discipline or excess of emotion, there's a strong chance that they are merely reflecting back a disowned part of you. Jung famously wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." What does this mean for your everyday life? It means that every time you feel a strong emotional reaction to someone, you are being given an opportunity for self-inquiry. But instead of looking inward, we tend to focus outward. Instead of asking, "Why do I feel this way?" we say, "That person is insufferable." Instead of examining what it is within us that reacts, we blame the external source of our discomfort. It is easier to remain blind to our own flaws than to acknowledge the aspects of ourselves we'd rather not see. We all have a shadow, the hidden, suppressed, and often rejected aspects of our psyche that we do not want to admit exist. This shadow forms through childhood, when we learn which behaviors are acceptable and which are not. We push the unacceptable traits deep into the unconscious, believing they are gone. But the unconscious does not forget. It does not erase. It waits. And it finds its way back into our awareness, not directly, but through our emotional responses to others. The anger you feel towards someone's selfishness may be a reflection of your own hidden desire to put yourself first. The resentment you hold towards someone's success may be a projection of your own abandoned ambitions. The disgust you feel towards someone's lack of discipline may stem from your own fears of inadequacy. The more you reject something within yourself, the more likely it is to appear in your external world. Imagine walking through a house of mirrors, unaware that every distorted image is actually a reflection of you. At first, the figures in the mirror seem like separate individuals, each displaying exaggerated traits that provoke different emotional reactions. But as you look closer, you realize that each reflection is revealing a different aspect of yourself. Some parts familiar, some long forgotten. Life operates much the same way. The people who enter our lives, particularly those who trigger strong emotions, serve as reflections of our inner world. They reveal the very things we need to integrate, but rather than seeing them as teachers, we resist them. We see them as obstacles. We label them as toxic. We cut them out of our lives, believing that by removing them, we remove the discomfort. And yet, the lesson remains unlearned. The reflection finds a new form, and the pattern repeats. Think about your relationships. Have you ever noticed that certain types of people seem to appear in your life over and over again? Perhaps you always find yourself dealing with controlling individuals, or you repeatedly attract partners who are emotionally unavailable. It's easy to believe that the world is simply full of these people, that you are just unlucky. But what if these patterns are appearing for a reason? What if life is continuously presenting you with the same lesson, hoping you will one day recognize the reflection? The moment you shift from blame to self-inquiry, everything changes. Instead of asking, "Why do people keep treating me this way?" you ask, "What part of me is attracting this experience?" Instead of saying, "This person is toxic," you ask, "What unresolved part of myself is being revealed through them?" This is the key to breaking patterns. The moment you own the reflection, you stop needing the mirror. Projection is not always negative. Sometimes, the people we admire most are also mirrors. Have you ever found yourself deeply drawn to someone, feeling an unexplainable sense of admiration? The qualities we admire in others are often latent within us, waiting to be acknowledged and expressed. The brilliance, strength, or confidence you see in another person is likely a reflection of your own potential, your own unrealized greatness. Just as we project our shadows onto others, we also project our light. The things we long for, the traits we wish we had, the aspirations we hold, these, too, are mirrored back to us through others. But rather than recognizing these traits as part of ourselves, we place them on a pedestal, believing they belong to someone else. The truth is, they are a part of you. The question is not, "How can I be like them?" but, "How can I awaken that part of myself?" The world is a mirror, reflecting both our darkness and our light. Every person you meet is offering you an opportunity for self-discovery. The ones who trigger you reveal your wounds. The ones who inspire you reveal your potential. The ones who hurt you reveal what is left to heal. The ones who love you reflect the parts of yourself that you have embraced. Life is not happening to you. It is happening for you. The lessons are everywhere. The question is, are you willing to look into the mirror? Are you willing to face yourself without resistance, without judgment? Are you willing to own the parts of yourself that you have long denied? The path to self-awareness begins with a simple shift in perspective. The next time you feel anger, jealousy, resentment, or admiration towards someone, pause. Instead of reacting, reflect. Instead of pointing outward, turn inward. Ask yourself, what is this person showing me about myself? The more you practice this, the more you reclaim your power. Instead of being controlled by your unconscious projections, you begin to integrate them. Instead of blaming others, you learn from them. Instead of avoiding your reflection, you embrace it. And in doing so, you take the first step toward true self-awareness. The people in your life are not here by accident. They are your teachers, your mirrors, your guides. They are revealing to you, in every interaction, who you truly are. So the next time someone triggers you, remember this. The lesson is not in them. The lesson is in you. The mirror is always reflecting. The question is, are you ready to see? The collective shadow, while often discussed in terms of individual psychology, also exists on a broader, societal level. Just as individuals repress aspects of themselves that they find unacceptable, societies and cultures do the same. The collective shadow encompasses the traits, behaviors, and histories that a group refuses to acknowledge or confront. These repressed elements often manifest in the form of social conflicts, systemic injustices, and cultural blind spots. For example, a society that prides itself on equality and justice may struggle to confront its history of oppression or its ongoing inequalities. The collective shadow is not merely the sum of individual shadows. It is a shared psychic space where the unacknowledged aspects of a group's identity reside. Consider the phenomenon of scapegoating, where a group projects its collective shadow onto an individual or subgroup. This process allows the group to maintain its self-image by externalizing its flaws and failures. The scapegoat becomes a mirror, reflecting back the disowned aspects of the collective psyche. But just as individual projection perpetuates personal blindness, collective projection perpetuates societal blindness until a group is willing to confront its shadow. It will continue to repeat the same patterns of conflict and division. The collective shadow also manifests in the way societies define their enemies. In times of war or political tension, the other is often portrayed as the embodiment of everything the group fears or despises. This dehumanization serves a psychological function. It allows the group to project its own darkness onto the enemy, thereby preserving its self-image as righteous or virtuous. But this process comes at a cost. By refusing to acknowledge the shadow within, the group perpetuates cycles of violence and oppression. The challenge, then, is to recognize that the enemy is not merely an external threat, but a reflection of the group's own unconscious. This recognition requires a profound shift in perspective, one that moves from blame to self-inquiry, from division to integration. It requires the courage to look into the collective mirror and confront the darker aspects of our shared humanity. Culture and society play a significant role in shaping what we project and what we repress. From a young age, we are taught which traits are desirable and which are unacceptable. These lessons are not neutral. They are shaped by the values, norms, and power structures of the society in which we live. For example, in a culture that values individualism and competition, traits like vulnerability or interdependence may be pushed into the shadow. In a culture that prioritizes conformity, traits like creativity or nonconformity may be repressed. These cultural norms influence not only what we project onto others, but also what we admire or aspire to. Consider the way gender roles shape our projections. In many societies, men are socialized to repress traits associated with femininity, such as emotional expression or nurturing, while women are socialized to repress traits associated with masculinity, such as assertiveness or ambition. These repressed traits often resurface in the form of projections. A man who has been taught to suppress his emotions may project his own vulnerability onto women, perceiving them as overly emotional or weak. A woman who has been taught to suppress her ambition may project her own drive onto men, perceiving them as domineering or aggressive. These projections reinforce cultural stereotypes and perpetuate gender inequality. The media also plays a powerful role in shaping our projections. Through films, television, and advertising, we are presented with idealized images of beauty, success, and happiness. These images often reflect the collective aspirations of a society, but they also reveal its shadow. For example, the glorification of wealth and status may reflect a society's repressed fears of poverty and failure. The obsession with youth and beauty may reflect a society's repressed fears of aging and mortality. By examining these cultural projections, we can gain insight into the collective psyche and the values that shape our lives. The media, in this sense, is not merely a reflection of society. It is also a mirror, revealing the hidden fears, desires, and contradictions that lie beneath the surface. The relationship between individual and collective consciousness is complex and dynamic. While individuals are shaped by the cultures and societies in which they live, they also have the power to influence and transform those cultures and societies. This interplay is particularly evident in the realm of art and creativity. Artists often serve as mirrors, reflecting the collective shadow and bringing it into conscious awareness. Through their work, they challenge societal norms, expose hidden truths, and provoke emotional reactions. In this sense, art is not merely a form of self-expression. It is a form of collective self-inquiry. Consider the role of protest art in social movements. By depicting the injustices and inequalities that society refuses to acknowledge, protest artists hold up a mirror to the collective shadow. Their work forces viewers to confront uncomfortable truths and question their assumptions. This process can be deeply unsettling, but it is also transformative. By bringing the shadow into the light, protest art creates the possibility for change. The interplay between individual and collective consciousness is also evident in the realm of politics. Political leaders often rise to power by tapping into the collective shadow. They exploit the fears, prejudices, and desires of the group, using them to gain support and consolidate power. But this process is not one-sided. The collective shadow also shapes the leader, reflecting the group's unconscious material back onto them. In this sense, political leaders are not merely individuals. They are symbols, embodying the hopes and fears of the collective psyche. The rise of authoritarian leaders, for example, often reflects a society's repressed desire for order and control, as well as its fear of chaos and uncertainty. By examining the dynamics of power and leadership, we can gain insight into the collective shadow and the unconscious forces that shape our world. History, too, can be seen as a mirror, reflecting the collective shadow of humanity. The events and figures of the past reveal the patterns and dynamics that shape our present. By studying history, we can gain insight into the unconscious forces that drive human behavior. For example, the rise and fall of empires often reflect the interplay between ambition and hubris, power and corruption. The struggles for civil rights and social justice reveal the tension between oppression and liberation, fear and courage. These historical patterns are not merely abstract concepts. They are reflections of the collective psyche. Consider the way history is taught and remembered. In many cases, the stories we tell about the past are shaped by the collective shadow. We emphasize the achievements and virtues of our ancestors while downplaying or ignoring their flaws and failures. This selective memory serves a psychological function. It allows us to maintain a positive self-image as a society, but it also perpetuates blindness and denial. By confronting the darker aspects of our history, we can begin to integrate the collective shadow and move toward a more honest and inclusive understanding of who we are. Religion and spirituality have long played a role in helping individuals and societies confront and integrate the shadow. Many religious traditions include rituals and practices designed to bring the shadow into conscious awareness. For example, the Christian concept of confession involves acknowledging one's sins and seeking forgiveness. The Buddhist practice of mindfulness involves observing one's thoughts and emotions without judgment. These practices create a space for self-inquiry and transformation. At the same time, religion can also be a source of projection. The tendency to externalize the shadow is evident in the way many religious traditions portray evil as an external force or entity. By projecting evil onto demons, devils, or other worldly beings, individuals and societies can avoid confronting the darkness within themselves. This process can lead to moral absolutism and intolerance, as the other is seen as inherently evil or corrupt. The challenge, then, is to use religion and spirituality as tools for self-awareness, rather than as mechanisms for projection. The journey of self-awareness is not an easy one. It requires courage, humility, and a willingness to confront the parts of ourselves we would rather ignore. But it is also a profoundly liberating journey. By embracing the mirror, we reclaim our power and our potential. We move from blame to responsibility, from judgment to curiosity, from fragmentation to wholeness. The world is a mirror, and every reflection is an invitation to grow. The people who challenge us, inspire us, and love us are all part of this grand journey of self-discovery. The question is, are we ready to look into the mirror? Are we ready to see ourselves fully, not just the parts we like, but the parts we've hidden away? The moment we do, we'll realize that the people in our lives are not here to hurt us or hinder us. They are here to help us become the fullest, most authentic versions of ourselves. So the next time someone triggers you, remember this. The lesson is not in them. The lesson is in you. The mirror is always reflecting. The question is, are you ready to see?